Good afternoon, little brother.
Good afternoon, big brother.
We are the Steinmetz brothers, and this is the Pseudo Scholars Podcast, where we believe that science isn't just for scientists. We think that science is for anyone with integrity who honestly wants to know more about the world. And that's what we are. Each week, we grapple with reality by challenging what we think we know about things.
We challenge what we think we know about the world of gene editing and the new CRISPR technology that's taking over. We challenge what we think we know about, the future of financial institutions and how blockchain might revolutionize it. We even challenge what we think we know about the generations that we were born into and how that plays a role in our personalities and our worldviews. So we like to dive into all these types of topics, really vast, and really do the research, churn it up, and see what we kind of come to conclusions on, and see how that might stimulate, inform, and inspire our worldviews.
Really what we're doing, Kate, is scratching our own itch, right? Because we're two guys who just want to know a little bit more about the world, but we've been pretty busy lately. I mean, we haven't had a lot of time to focus on topics. Once a month, we take a break and we do a beer banter episode where we just see what comes, and we're basically free rolling this thing.
Yeah, so this is all about the flow. Shane's got beer because he doesn't work a real job and he can drink alcohol during the day. I work a real job and I'm on my lunch break, so I'm kind of rolling with the organic pink lemonade from Costco, 2-for-1 style.
Nice, kid. I've got a session IPA brewed in Krakow, Poland, where I live now. And by the way, it is after 7 p.m. my time, so I think it's okay for me to be drinking alcohol. But anyways, yeah, it's good to drink some good beer because I've been living in Hungary for the last few months and the beer was terrible. Now I've come to Krakow and there's a great craft beer scene. Really good beer here.
Oh, that's really cool. So I forget about the time difference all the time. So I'm over here in Houston, Texas, never changing. You can't ever, finding Shane's like playing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. So he's in a new place every week. But yeah, Shane, tell us a little bit about what's been going on in Hungary and being in a part of the world that's old, has a ton of history and things like that, probably a lot of Westerners haven't been exposed to. I know I don't know a lot about it.
Well, it's my first time in Eastern Europe, and I've loved it. It's been an interesting part of the world that I've never spent any time in prior to this. And the first thing that Americans will get incentivized to study when they arrive is World War I history, especially in Hungary, because it was, of course, Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire who was assassinated in Serbia that kind of kickstarted things for World War I. And that was always my understanding of how World War I started. Some guy got assassinated and everybody got pissed off and went to war. I mean, we're talking about a world where there was really 5 major players. So we're talking about the Russian Empire, kind of the Tsars, pre-Bolsheviks, okay, the Tsars. Then we're talking about the Austro-Hungarians. We've got the Germans, we've got the French, and we've got the British. I've heard it said that the American Empire at the time, or whatever we were, a young civilization kind of in the turn of the 20th century, would have been as powerful as like a Belgium or a Sweden. We were kind of a nobody. So you got 5 major players on the world stage, and where I was living, Hungary was a part of one of those.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So how did that all shake out a little bit in the end? And because I think that it's pretty interesting to look at how those kind of historical, I've heard them called catalytic events, have changed kind of the scope of history and launched like a country like America. How do we find ourselves going from, kind of a nobody in the early to, 1900s all the way to kind of the superpower that we're known as today?
Well, now having done quite a bit of research into this topic just on my own for fun, so I can share it with the podcast now, which is awesome. I've become so obsessed with World War I history in the last few months. I would argue that geopolitics and the trends and the way the world is shaped today could all be traced back to one man. And that man was the leader of the German Empire, Kaiser Wilhelm II. But a little known fact about Kaiser Wilhelm II, who ultimately went to war with the world in the First World War, he was the son, or the grandson rather, of Queen Victoria. So the longest reigning queen of England her grandson was the Emperor of Germany, and he led the great assault that took on the world, including where his grandmother was from, England. How crazy is that?
That's insane. Now, I'm not great on World War I history, but I can only imagine that the only reason that you have a descendant of the Queen of England ruling in another country must have been political power, right? They must have been consolidating.
That's exactly what was happening. So all around, princes and archdukes were marrying princesses and whatever the equivalent of a female duke is. And there was just intermingling. So from all the way out to Russia to the UK, you were sharing and swapping your children to create political alliances. And so the way that those five major empires shook out, according to Otto von Bismarck, the great German diplomat of the late 19th century, or rather the late 18th century, the way that Otto von Bismarck had it shook out, Cade, is that he wanted to have a close relationship with Russia and the Austro-Hungarians. So that would make it Russia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the German Empire, newly minted in around the 1870s, by the way. So Germany was not around that long before they went to war with the world for the first time. So he was thinking, if I've got control or good relationships with two out of the three, that makes us too strong to be taken on by the remaining two, France and England. But the crazy thing about Kaiser Wilhelm II, the reigning emperor who came in kind of towards the end of Otto von Bismarck's career, is that he was a bit of a madman, as historians paint him out to be. And he fired Otto von Bismarck, or let him kind of walk off into the sunset towards the end of his career. And he completely destroyed relationships with Russia to the point where it was really only the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians that were buddies. So now what do you have? You've got the Russians up against the eastern front of Germany, and you've got the French and the British up against the western front of Germany. And ultimately, Kaiser Wilhelm just kind of freaked out. After the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Serbia, the Russians go into Serbia and claim to support Serbia, which at the time were a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Germans kind of got concerned and were thinking, oh man, this is going to happen. Eventually, they're going to come and take our country. They're going to come and conquer us, because that was the way of the world. Think pre-Napoleonic era, or a post-Napoleonic era, I should say. And at that point, he invaded Belgium and initiated what became World War I that left the Germans completely annihilated.
So what's kind of interesting is, I remember when we would learn about history in school, and the teachers would always use, I guess it's kind of an adage now, but, if you don't learn about history, you're kind of destined to repeat all the mistakes that, people that have lived before you have made. I'm not sure that we can ever break that cycle. That's a totally different topic, but it feels to me like they didn't really learn from the whole don't fight a two-front war in World War I, and they repeated that mistake in World War II. So it didn't work out too well strategically.
That's a good point. But the way that they were going to do this is actually really interesting. I know a little bit about it. They calculated the time that they thought it would take to invade and conquer France, and then turn around and fight the Russians on the other front. So the strategic move that Kaiser Wilhelm and all of his famous generals of World War I made was that we are going to attack first. So we are going to try to gain momentum by rolling through Belgium, conquering France, and I forget what it was. It was something like 490 hours. They made an assumption that if we can beat France in 490 hours, then we can turn around and fight the Russians one-on-one instead of going one-on-two. But it didn't work out quite as easily, as they got held up by the Belgians, which was a big surprise at the start of the war. But nonetheless, I mean, here was this powerful force that's landlocked. Germany essentially being landlocked with a little bit of a coastline to the north, but just trapped on all sides. And I think you get a continual historical resurgence of this mindset of the Germans that we are always resisting wills from all around us. And it's really interesting how that has shaped the world that we live in today, and where, you could argue that Western Europe is really third tier at this point in comparison to the United States and East Asia.
Oh, that's pretty interesting, because it feels to me, or at least sounds instinctively, like the reconstruction, and maybe that's only a World War II word, but the loss that they suffered in World War I. It's interesting to see how that might be connected to Adolf Hitler coming to power in World War II, as Germany kind of goes for a second chance, right, to try to take over the world, and makes a lot more progress, but again runs into the issue of really geography in some ways, right? Being surrounded by enemies, and it becoming just a very difficult war to fight, with Europe being so divided. But Shane, tell us a little bit. Oh, sorry.
I should just say that the gentleman you just referenced, Adolf Hitler, wrote Mein Kampf towards the back end of World War I, and that started to become the philosophical doctrine that he was obviously ascribing to and pushing his entire country to, the total opposite of the way that the Russians went, the way of the Bolsheviks. So we've got like the Tolstoy versus Hitler mindset. So totally two different confrontations there in terms of ideology, and which was a major basis for the war.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that Hitler wrote that while he was in prison, as he was trying to kind of lead a revolt, and Germany wasn't quite ready for it, if I'm remembering my history correctly. But it's kind of cool, Shane, because so much of this stuff that we read in history books, we don't oftentimes get an opportunity to connect with the tangible aspects of that, like being in those places or seeing artifacts and things like that. Well, just give us a couple of quick highlights about your time in this new part of the world and how that's kind of maybe sparked your interest in this topic.
Sure. Here's one that's a little bit fretful. I mean, I guess we're being hard on the Germans today, but I don't know. They deserve it. Historically, we need to remember these things. And I'm in Poland right now, but I'm in Krakow. So Krakow was the center of Jewish migration during World War II. Is where the Germans forced most of the Jews from this region of the world to relocate. So they were told at the beginning of the war they needed to relocate to Krakow. So that they came to Krakow, and then they were relocated to a small sub-district of Krakow, which now happens to be the coolest neighborhood to hang out in, where all the cool clubs are and stuff, where I was hanging out this past weekend. And then later they were put on a train and driven 20 minutes south to a location that we all know very well, Auschwitz. So Chelsea and I will go and visit Auschwitz in a few weekends, and I think at that point it'll become even more real to us. But just seeing the impacts on the Jewish culture here in Poland as a result of the war has to make you interested in history. How can it not make you interested in our past? It wasn't that long ago. I mean, our grandparents were alive. Our grandparents were young men when this all happened. And it was real. You know, millions of people were murdered because of their cultural and religious affiliations. So for me, Kate, it's been like a reminder of the past and probably a call to action to ensure that wherever else this could be going on around the world, we have to involve ourselves and stop it before we repeat history.
Well, that's really cool that you've been able to experience all of that, because I think that just being in the States, where we're such a relatively new country, and really lacking in the historical front in terms of major cataclysmic events that have happened. That's got to be the cool part of being in Europe, right? Is that you're kind of only a stone throws away from different cultures, from totally different, histories and impacts on the world. Kind of, it's a melting pot over there in Europe of all these different countries right on top of each other. And I guess probably fairly reasonable that all those cultures are seeking to proliferate, and why there has been a lot of wars in Europe over the past couple hundred years. But anyways, that's a really cool experience.
Yeah, it was really, really cool, or has been really cool. And we'll stay out here towards the end of the summer, at which point, Cade, we're going to come and meet you in Western Europe. So we won't be looking at World War I history so much, although the Italians were involved. But we're going to be looking at some of the earliest forms of civilization when we come and meet you in Italy.
Yeah, so we're heading out to Rome on the last day of August through the 12th of September. So Emily and I are pretty excited for that. I've booked all of our hotels and train tickets, and pretty much all squared away on the logistics front. And yeah, what I'm really excited about is going to Rome, where the world has been changed permanently. Like, this is one of the most powerful civilization that's ever existed, and the effects of what happened hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years ago are still being, impactful today in all types of different cultures. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to get onto the history buff as you've kind of become, as I get to go and experience a little bit of it for myself.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about that once we learn more about it. But this is the question for you, or the quest for you to learn about while you're in Italy. I've been inherently curious about how the cycle from republic to dictator to republic happened in the Roman Empire. And I don't really remember from the history books, but I know that they did that, which is crazy to think. That imagine the United States being a formed republic as we are today, managed by representatives that we elect, and then all of a sudden kind of being overthrown by a dictatorial system, and then learning from our mistake and reverting back to the republic. So that's going to be really cool to learn about.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about that. But that's enough for world travels for now. Really interesting topic, and we'll be excited to share what we learned and experience in Italy in a few months. But Shane, talk to us a little bit about the cryptocurrency world, because I gotta confess, I feel a little guilty, because we do a podcast episode about how amazing cryptocurrency, and I think we're going to specify that we still think that it's really amazing, although the market has changed slightly. So let's talk a little bit about the ebbs and flows of that crazy world.
Sure. It's a bubble, I guess, is the way to put it. I know no other better way to put it than there was an optimism bubble that was created in the space, and we didn't make it any better by tagging our headline dollars is more like $70,000 from that period of time. But I'm not worried about it because I still believe that $70,000 is going to become $1 million one day. So, I mean, we should talk about this in the sense that, was there a bubble? Did something happen to cryptocurrency in like the past month or something that should affect the way that people are thinking about the currency? Probably, but there hasn't been that big of an effect on me, Kate. I'll be honest, just because I've been through a couple of these bubbles already. This one's not even nearly the size and scope of the bubbles that I've been through with Bitcoin in the past. So I think what has happened, Kate, is there's just been a mad rush of capital flooding into these new markets, the cryptocurrency market. So we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about Ethereum, and then we're talking about ICOs, other initial coin offerings, smaller, lesser known coins that people don't know so much about, but thought they could invest in really early and get rich quick. So there was this mad rush of capital, as I should say. And I think it just exaggerated the optimistic market that existed there. You know, those products were overpriced.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we can see this happen in lots and lots of other stocks, and if we're to liken, you know, the market cap of something like Ethereum, a product like Ethereum, to a stock, and it has some really similar qualities, we can look at a company like Tesla, who hasn't figured out how to make one penny, right? But it's really important that people understand that valuations of companies are really based on like discounted cash flows from a future perspective. So really what you do is you say, okay, how much money are they going to make next year and the year after and the year after and the year after? And then you do a little bit of simple math. You discount that all back to today, and then you figure out, how do I value this company? So Tesla has actually just recently had a pretty big dip in their stock price, getting close to the $400 marker and then going all the way down to 300 in a matter of a few weeks or something like that. And the answer is that there was a bubble there as well, that people are really optimistic about the future, but you have to ask yourself, are there results being churned out right now, or is this a bit overvalued? And the market always tends to correct itself in that way. And so I agree that there's really no reason on the performance side for people saying, hey, Ethereum is less valuable. Let's start charging, or let's start making trades at a lower price point. That's really not the case. But the problem is that originally it really wasn't the case that it should have been worth so much, because it really hadn't done a lot. We're still waiting on a lot of commercialization aspects. We want to see a lot more Fortune 500 companies come in and say, we're going to start Bitcoin or blockchain groups that are become experts within our company that are just going to focus on how to apply this software and you know, this new technology to how we do business. We need a lot more real results from the Bitcoin and the Ethereum market in order to see the kind of long-term growth that we want to see. But I agree with you completely that you really still are asking the same fundamental questions, and that unless you're trying to make money really, really quickly, which if you are, you should probably pick something different than blockchain, because no one can really predict it. But in the long term, it's still the fundamental questions of the technology. Is it sustainable? Does it have real application? And are we going to see lots of people, you know, start to use it?
Right. And you hit on something there that was really critical to the reason for the fast crash that we're in right now. There was a really, really fast uptick, and then that almost always is followed by a really fast downturn because the products got overvalued, largely because there was this big movement of FOMO types. FOMO types, you know them, the fear of missing out. They don't know anything about the technology. They don't understand it. They're just trying to get rich quick. A lot of these people have been messaging me over the recent months because they've seen it on their Twitter feeds and they see it on Wall Street Journal, and they want to get in and buy and sell and make a little bit of money real quick. That's been the mindset of a lot of these new investors that have brought in this mad rush of capital. And it's been a bad thing for Bitcoin, because what happened is probably some of the people who've had really early positions in Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe earlier than me even, have sold. So they made enough money to retire and live for the rest of their lives. And so they've said, okay, I'm happy with where Ethereum is at $400, and I'm happy with Bitcoin at whatever, was 3,000 plus, I think. I can't remember, but
it was really close to 3,000.
Close to 3,000. So it was really high. So people who were early days started selling huge quantities of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that just freaked out all the FOMOs. The fear of missing out types that don't understand the technology, that are just trying to get rich, freaked out, and now they've all pulled out too. So they got scared and they've pulled their money out. And naturally, when something like that happens, I mean, you've seen exactly what happened to the market. The first guys start selling, that increases supply, and then that drives the price down, and then everybody else freaks out and they all sell. So ultimately, Cade, the question that we need to ask ourselves is whether or not we think that Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be worth a lot of money one day. If they are going to be worth a lot of money one day, this could actually be a very beneficial thing, a bubble pop. Because what it means is that we can increase our position. We can buy a bunch of Bitcoin and Ethereum cheaply right now and continue to hold it for the long term as we're trying to do strategically. That's for those people that think it's actually going to be worth a lot of money one day. But the other side of the coin is, do you think Bitcoin and Ethereum could be worth nothing? I mean, if you think it could fall on its face and all of the technology and all of the millions of people who are adopting these technologies, a million plus people who are adopting these technologies are just going to give up and it's all going to break and it's not going to work. If you're one of those people, then you're just a day trader and you're in trouble, because you're right, Cade. It's so volatile and hard to predict.
I like how you kind of simplified the approach, and I would probably just like to take this moment to say this is how you should probably approach investing in general, unless you're literally just have money that you're ready to burn and you're fine with extremely high risk. And I like to look at the patterns of and disciplines of a guy like Warren Buffett. He really just looks at fundamentals. He doesn't get caught up in all the complex calculations and predictive modeling, because there's just so many factors. It's very, 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 very hard to do, right? If someone had figured out how to do it already, they would have, patented it, and we would all be doing things that way. But the fact of the matter is you can't eliminate risk altogether. And so Warren Buffett owns roughly 15% of Phillips 66. So I've actually paid quite a close attention to him in the last couple of years as he's been gathering more shares. And it's interesting because he just thought that we were undervalued, so he bought us. And every single time we dropped below a certain price, he bought more and he bought more and he bought more and he bought more, because he's a believer in it long term. And that's, I think, the approach that you and I would say you need to take with most of your investments, and also with blockchain. Because if you're just getting excited and you want to see results in a couple weeks, it's a get rich quick scheme, and that will probably land you in a world of trouble most of the time, because we just don't handle risk very well mentally and emotionally. And so we don't, kind of go with the system 2 type thinking that says, what do I think about the fundamentals? And then try not to respond emotionally, which is what a lot of people are doing, which is why we see the value changing so much. Because obviously, inherently, Ethereum is not changing value as much as people think it is. But that's really just about perception.
Yeah, very much so. To wrap this one up, my personal position is that I'm holding it for the long term. I'm increasing my position right now while the price is cheap, which means I'm buying. I'm not buying as much as I would have liked to, probably just because I've invested in some other businesses, my own personal businesses, and I still prefer to invest in my own personal business than I do in something that I can't influence. But I'm increasing my position via dollar cost averaging, buying the same amount that I always buy on a regular basis, on a recurring basis, and I'm holding this thing for 10, 15 plus years.
Yeah, I like the approach, and I'm working to the same kind of goals. So it's exciting stuff, but having fun in the world of cryptocurrency, it's always dynamic, and we always said that was a positive thing. So
yeah, Cedric, my buddy Cedric, who's really the Bitcoin guru that I've learned so much from, and he always says, just take a breath and stop looking at the price. And I remember when I used to check the price every single day, because I could see, my investments, my portfolio could swing by thousands of dollars. Like before I had a really big position, they could swing by thousands of dollars as it is right now. But now I just don't pay much attention to it. It's something that I accept. It's something that I recognize as a part of the game, as being an early adopter in any new technology. But I believe in it for the long term, and that's why I'll hold my position. And we'll do a podcast in 20 years, and we'll find out if we've gotten rich or if we've lost all of our money.
No, well said. Well said. All right, let's talk Floyd and Conor. It's kind of impossible to ignore these guys. In fact, I might throw Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, and Donald Trump in the ring for just kind of biggest egos. Not to
Yeah.
speak ill of our president, but I kind of see some similarities in their personalities. And they're really successful guys, and they know what they're doing. And I think there's always a little bit of brilliance beneath the madness, as we saw with Trump getting elected, and as we've seen with Floyd and Connor. But give me your pick, Shane. Or tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about this fight, because Vegas is blowing up. The office water cooler is all about Floyd and Connor. What's gonna happen?
Really? So you got mainstreamers talking about fighting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in my cube, we're making bets. We're deciding, how do we structure our deals, because obviously this is just, it is new precedent. We've never seen something like this outside of like maybe Valley Tudo, where it was just like no rules, this kind of really strange way of thinking about two men combating each other. But I just think it's setting a new precedent. So people are actually having a hard time figuring out, what kind of bets they like to make on this.
Well, I'm not in the US, so I don't get to enjoy the hype. Although I follow Dana White's blog. Dana White, the president of the UFC, has been vlogging during their crazy conference. So they've gone on this world press conference. I mean, let's just set this up. If people aren't following this and watching it on YouTube, you're crazy, because it's the most entertaining stuff since the Trump. Since Trump on the campaign trail and Trump in debates against Hillary and giving these ridiculous speeches, this is the most entertaining thing, in my opinion. So they started in LA, then they went to New York, or then they went to Toronto, rather. Then they went to New York, and then they went to London. Cade, please tell me you saw Conor McGregor in his polar bear coat, wearing no shirt on stage, just cheering and making fun of Floyd Mayweather and saying he was going to knock him out in 4 rounds, and the guy's never had a real professional boxing fight.
No, it's incredible. I mean, I look at Conor McGregor and I say, I think he must really believe all the things that are coming out of his mouth. And maybe it started out as fun, and maybe he obviously knows that the crazier he acts, the more views he's going to get, the more people are going to want to buy this fight, the bigger his payday, right? He's not an idiot. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to believe the look in his eyes that he actually thinks he's going to go and fight a guy that's never lost a fight and beat him fair and square.
Yeah. All right. So we should say that we're pretty close to this. I feel comfortable saying that I'm not a mainstreamer here, that I'm familiar with what's involved in the deal. I'm familiar with these two fighters and have been for a long time. I've watched every single one of Conor McGregor's fights. Most of them I've seen in real time on pay-per-view. And so he's the kind of guy that you cannot undervalue. You cannot count him out by sheer fact of his almost mental insanity and abilities to believe his own narrative. I mean, it is the fact that you relate this to Donald Trump is actually pretty amazing, because here we have a guy who's never boxed. Well, okay, he has boxed before, but not professionally. He was an amateur boxer, but he's never really boxed professionally. And he's about to step inside the ring with the best boxer of all time by record, the best boxer of all time. And he thinks he's going to win. It's so similar to Donald Trump, who's never done anything political in his life, stepping into the arena with all the best politicians in the world, truly believing that he's going to win. And there's some power in that.
I think there is power. It's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, and the guy just is totally confident. I mean, I think he is absolutely confident. I think he can see himself putting his left hand on the chin of Floyd Mayweather, something that nobody in boxing has ever been able to do. And he thinks he's going to be able to do it and knock him out. And so, it's crazy. So the bet that I've put personally on it with a buddy, just wagering, going to take the other guy out to lunch here. So nothing too serious, but it's simply this: Conor McGregor is going to finish the fight. That's what I believe is going to happen. So it's not going to end in a knockout. It's not going to end in a technical knockout, and it's not going to end in Conor saying, I can't go anymore. If those 3 things happen, then my buddy wins the fight. If he finishes the fight, if it goes to a decision, or if he knocks Floyd out, I win that bet. How do you like that? Would you take the same kind of structure personally?
Can you redescribe what you were saying with Conor? Because you said that can you just redescribe what your bet is?
Sure. So if I win the bet if Conor McGregor finishes the fight, right? As long as he doesn't get knocked out or technically knocked out, or as long as he doesn't just say, hey, I can't go anymore, Floyd's going to win this. If he can go 12 rounds and or beat him and it go to the decision card, I win that bet.
Oh, that's a great bet. Yeah, he's got a really strong chin. Now we're talking about 10-ounce gloves. They're big, giant pillows compared to Conor McGregor. Floyd doesn't have a lot of power. He's never had a lot of knockout power. I mean, it's been years. I can't remember how many years, but it's been years since he's knocked anybody out. If they get in real close and Floyd starts to land some punches, all you got to do is the stupidest thing in sports besides soccer when they dive. You just hug the guy. It's the dumbest thing in sports. But when you're in close and a guy's hitting you real hard, you just hug him, and then they separate you. So yeah. So Conor, if he knows the game, if he starts getting outboxed, he's quick, he's young, he can stay out of the way, and then he can just hug him. And I don't see Floyd knocking him out. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
So I think you have a good bet, Kate. I think you have a great bet.
The other reason why I don't think Floyd knocks him out is because Floyd Mayweather has everything to lose in this fight. Conor McGregor has almost nothing to lose unless he gets knocked out in the first round within 30 seconds and just gets overwhelmed. But this is really all about Floyd, defending his turf. It's his craft. Conor is up against insurmountable odds in terms of ability here. I mean, Floyd is an incredible boxer, an incredible athlete. He's never been squared up before. So the reason why I think that my bet is going to be solid here is because Floyd is not going to want to get too close to McGregor because that's the only way that he loses, right? He's not going to get lost, or he's not going to lose the fight because McGregor just strategically over 10 rounds just dots his eyes, right? It's just not going to happen. He's not good enough, and Floyd is too good. But what very well could happen is Floyd get a little bit over aggressive, Conor get inside his head, and as the Irishman says, every single time he puts his left on that chin, people go to sleep.
All right, and now let me share another potential that I've been thinking about recently. I haven't heard this yet in the media, so I think I'm the only one who's thinking this. Conor McGregor hasn't fought in a restricted fight in a lot of years. He did some gold glove boxing back in Ireland way back in the day, but his natural instincts are to punch, kick, claw, choke, knee, takedown. I could see things getting a little bit weird when those guys get in close and Floyd goes to hug him in like the boxing way, which is to me just the weakest cop out in all of sports besides the dive in soccer. You go in to hug him so that the referee has to separate you, and Conor just like knees him in the groin or something. Like I could see, or takes him down or tries to throw a guillotine on him. I could see something crazy like that happening.
Hey, you're not the only one that's been thinking that, because I've been thinking the exact same thing. So maybe it's people with jiu-jitsu backgrounds or with other martial arts, because you're just like, Conor ends this fight if they're fighting UFC within 30 seconds. Conor ends it almost instantly. And so the thing is, when you hurt a man's ego, that's when things get a little bit dangerous, because all of a sudden it's not about rules anymore. It's about my image. And if Conor McGregor knows anything, it's that his image equals money. And so he's going to do whatever he can to protect that. So I hope that Floyd's band of his entourage is ready to jump in there and try to hold these guys up, because I'm not sure that McGregor is going to stop if he starts to get a little bit insulted.
That's a good point. I think he could get a little bit crazy. Now, here's another potential that we haven't thought about, or I hadn't thought about until just now. What if the whole thing is rigged?
That's an interesting thought.
Do you think there's any potential for the entire thing to be rigged or gamified, and they already have an outcome in mind? They're going to go the distance and Floyd's going to win by decision. That's probably something that he benefits from. It's something that even McGregor benefits from. And they've got some kind of arrangement for how the whole thing's going to play out. I mean, this is such a weird fight. These guys don't even really know each other. The first time they met was at the press conference, and Conor McGregor was going off like a madman. And I think it did get into Floyd's head a little bit. But I'm not saying that it's too far outside of conventional thinking to say that these guys haven't already rigged the outcome.
There are hundreds of millions of dollars on the line with this fight. I absolutely believe that something like that could be taking place. Even if it's not a conspiracy, let's get, Conor and Floyd are wink, wink, eye, nod, nod as they step into the ring, saying, hey, you do what you said you were going to do. And I say, I'm going to do. It could be more subtle and kind of just implied than that. But yeah, I sure hope the fans get what they want, because it's going to be really disappointing, I think, for boxing and for UFC a little bit, as they put their two best guys in the ring, for us to see something that's just really not that entertaining, and a whole lot of Floyd defense and a whole lot of Conor not being able to hit him or not trying to hit him or whatever it may be. Because I think that's disappointing for everyone if that happens.
Good point. As a fight fan, this is the last chance for boxing to prove to me that you're a fighting sport. I know it's a little bit new school, and I wasn't really around. I was too young during the era of the heavyweights when everybody was real excited about all those guys fighting. But to be perfectly honest, I don't find boxing that exciting when you watch a 12-round fight of two guys who are ducking and weaving, and they're so restricted by the set of rules that are available to them. I'm a purist in the sense that I want to see the winner, despite what they can be and do by rule restrictions. So I much prefer to see an all-out fight. I'd rather see a UFC fight any day of the night. The last boxing fight I watched was the Pacquiao fight, and it was a total boring event. And if this is more of that, I think boxing is going to lose the mixed martial art fan forever.
It very well could, and this soft exposure to boxing because of this fight has really just led me to think that we've just kind of misunderstood boxing, and what hurts boxing is the contrast of it to the UFC, which is so much more entertaining, so much more exciting, and obviously so much harder to do. Guys are tougher. I think they're way better conditioned, and I think we can make that argument. We're not going to make it here and now. But boxing is more of a science. It's kind of the sweet science, right? And so we're really looking for two different things. But what we're saying is that all the people that want to fight, they want to see who the toughest guy is, are going to stop going to boxing. So if you know a lot about boxing and you're really enthralled by the science of it and the strategy, because it is more skillful,
highly technical. Yeah.
It's more highly technical and more. They have to be more precise and kind of more exact, I guess. But the UFC is clearly selling a better product for the people that are trying to consume that type of fight. And so that's obviously you and me and a lot more people. And that's why UFC has grown in popularity so much.
As I think it's the only growing sport by viewer in the United States now, with all the major sports declining. Millennials not watching the NFL and the MLB and the NBA at very high rates. But hey, that's a transition point, right? So now we want to talk UFC, because just at the end of the month here, we've got only 12 days till John Jones versus Daniel Cormier take 2.
Who do you think is going to win, Shane?
I'm saying DC, son. We got to go with the good man, the man with integrity, the guy who's fought for his life, the one without the talent. John Jones, we know it. John Jones is the most talented UFC fighter in the history of fighting. He's a freakish athlete, and he wins on pure abilities and creativity, and he's wonderful to watch in that sense. But he's thrown away his life. He's never shown the abilities to manage championship-style fame. DC is a great champion. We can't forget that DC's defended his title and been the champion since John Jones got kicked out. I say DC, second round. He's going to take him to the ground, and it's going to be a ground and pound victory.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope you're right. I mean, I'm a DC guy, but I gotta sometimes liken DC a little bit to KD, our boy in the NBA, in that he's the second overall pick. He's the second best player out of high school. He comes in second in the MVP like 3 times in a row to LeBron James. Now, he did tuck tail and run to the Golden State Warriors, and I don't acknowledge that. But I think that is a little bit of a mental barrier for some of those guys that are kind of always trying to prove themselves versus the guys that just kind of expect it to happen. And I think mentally and psychologically it helps performance a lot. But I'm definitely rooting for DC. But, I'm not so sure that Dad's come home, and DC's been ruling the house. But Dad's come back, and he's gonna show everyone who's boss.
We'll see how it goes. It should be a good matchup. Other cool things in sports these days, Cade. I mean, Roger Federer in his 8th Wimbledon title.
Yeah, so this is probably worthy of a monologue. Roger Federer is the greatest athlete at his sport that we've ever seen in our lifetime. There's just no doubt about it. The only other guy that I might even throw in that mix is a drug addict, and that's Lance Armstrong. And what he did winning 7 Tour de France's would have been comparable. But what we're seeing here is a guy that is older than anybody else that's ever won a major tournament before, at the most competitive time in the history of Wimbledon. And he did it without losing a single set. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, the poise and the grace that he plays with. He's absolutely a champion in every kind of way. He's what Tiger Woods should have been, and his relationship with Tiger is kind of interesting because they're I used to see them as synonyms just in different sports, but he's absolutely incredible.
But he's kind of a bum his personal life, right?
Roger Federer, are you kidding me? He's been married to the same girl his whole life. He's never been divorced. He's got 2 beautiful little twin girls. He speaks 3 languages fluently. He's only he's only got sponsors from like the classiest companies ever, like Rolex. I mean, no, this guy's a fashion icon. He's the total package, Shane. I'm totally bro crushing on Roger Federer.
I know, I'm just kidding. Roger's the boss. I just turned my camera off since we were having a little bit of bandwidth trouble. Well, that's pretty cool. Anything else going on in sports these days? I mean, in the baseball world, was there a big record that got broken recently? I saw.
Well, so I don't know the record that you're talking about, but I do know that Aaron Judge has done something that no one has ever seen before. If you did not get to watch the home run derby, you didn't get to watch the guy with the most power that I've ever seen play in professional baseball before hit 500-foot home runs and make it look absolutely effortless. I mean, baseball, for baseball fans, this is a great time. We're seeing a ton of young players that are doing some really dominant things. Bryce Harper and Mike Trout are the 2 best players in baseball, and they're both 25 and under. Clayton Kershaw is making a name for himself, probably the greatest of our lifetime, and gets thrown right into the pot with, Greg Maddux, Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, Warren Spahn, some of these guys is one of the all-time greats. So it's a great time in Major League Baseball. But, yeah, I don't know the record you're talking about.
Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So it's actually the anniversary. I think he went 0 for 4, I think, on this day in history and ended his 56-game hitting streak. But interestingly enough, and this is kind of one of those, I think he went 0 for 4 and was robbed of 2 base hits by like the Baltimore Orioles third baseman or something like that. And then he proceeded to go on like another 17-game hitting streak right after that. So one of the most untouchable records in professional sports history, that 56-game hitting streak, could have turned into like almost 70 plus or minus some if he hadn't lost out on a couple of great plays by the third baseman.
Cool story. All right, kid, I know you've got to get back to work, and we are having trouble with my Polish Wi-Fi. My Polish beer is on fire, but my Polish Wi-Fi seems to be really slow. So, kid, we should probably wrap it up. I know you've got to get back to the office. Any parting shots?
No. Just all I'm saying is go check out what Aaron Judge did in the home run derby. It was absolutely mind-blowing if you didn't get to check it out.
Yeah, he is freakishly strong. Such a smooth swinger. I think he'll probably be the face of the game here within the next few months. If he's not already the face of the game, he's taken it from Bryce Harper.
He looks like a defensive end. He's 6'7", like 270.
Wow, what a beast.
Yeah.
All right, kid. Well, I'll let you get back to work, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of my evening. Sorry for the Wi-Fi troubles for anybody listening. We'll do our best to edit them out.
Yep, always getting better. Continuous improvement. That's the pseudo scholar way. So we'll talk to you later, big brother.
All right, see you later, little brother.